bravery and unquestioned sacrifice. More than 200,000 Gurkhas fought for Britain in the First World War. 20,000 were killed or injured. In World War II, some 250,000 took on the Germans at Tobruk and Monte Cassino and the fanatical Japanese in the Far East. They suffered 23,655 casualties. Most men are marching into oblivion. 4 Gurkha regiments have been concertinaed into one, 2/3 of their number jettisoned. Yet courtesy prevails with the traditional floral farewell to Prince Philip, an anomaly explained by George MacDonald Fraser, novelist and military historian who fought alongside them in Burma.
That was the curious thing about the Gurkha. These awfully happy, jolly, nice little men were the most terrible, dangerous fighting men on the face of the earth. I mean, they were natural-born killers.
MacDonald Fraser's celebrated fictional hero Flashman would have fainted at the outset of this Gurkha action against the Japanese.
They went into a Japanese position. The ground in front of the position was littered with their rifles. They just dropped their rifles and went in with their kukris. And it was discovered afterwards, when they were withdrawn, they didn't have a single round of ammunition among them. They had just fought the Japs hand to hand. I always thought it was a pretty clumsy weapon, but it suits the Gurkhas, obviously. It was a very fearsome thing, and I should think probably terrified the opposition more than any other weapon in the armoury.
Flashman would have been wise. The Gurkhas, brandishing their kukris in this World War II footage, were enough to put the fear of God into the godless. And then came the terrifying war cry. The Gurkhas are coming. In fact, it was the advance of the British in India early in the 19th century that was to forge an initially bizarre alliance. The East India Company's foot soldiery swept the entire subcontinent before them, until they reached the Himalayan kingdom of Nepal. Nepal, still living in the Stone Age, was going to be a pushover, dozily compliant. No sooner had its population risen than it was ready to go to bed again. It was a desperate misjudgment. Bloated from steamrolling a huge subcontinent, they encountered the men from Gorkha, from which the Gurkhas take their name, uninformed that its inhabitants regarded war as sport. From this tiny mountain fort, the Gurkhas, led by Pirti Narayan Shah, had swooped into the valleys to occupy 700 frontier miles, harass India and invade Tibet. The advance of the British army didn't bother them at all. The clashes were probably unique in military history in that the British were soon to abandon their disparagement of native troops. At the Battle of Kalanga, heavily outgunned, the Gurkhas fought almost to the last man, losing 520 warriors, but not before killing almost 800 British troops. An ensign who survived it wrote, "Run they would not, and of death they seemed to have no fear, though their comrades were falling around them." It was a salutary put-down for patronizing attitudes, and was to lead to a remarkable alliance born of mutual admiration. After the battle, the British erected memorials to both sides, inscribing the Gurkha obelisk with the words, "They fought in fair conflict like men, and in the intervals of fighting showed us liberal courtesy." For the Gurkhas, life was never to be the same again. Their indomitable spirit, their stand here till we die philosophy had so startled their British opponents that their commander, General David Ochterlony, said in effect, "We must get these little bounders on our side." Pragmatically, the Gurkhas leader agreed that this was a jolly good idea. The British, he condescended, fought like lions. They're nearly as good as we are. And so was resolved a contract that was to put the Gurkhas under the aegis of the British Army for the next 180 years. The only change has been that they are now less exotically dressed.
Chin up. Okay.
Today's Gurkhas, to a man, come from the same Himalayan terrain, so barren and without future that recruitment into the British Army is the ultimate prize. So fierce is the competition that candidates have to submit to the indignity of being branded like cattle, albeit with indelible ink. This is to prevent the unsuccessful leapfrogging to the next recruitment outpost and applying again under a totally different name. Major Gordon Corrigan explains the qualities they're looking for.
I suppose what we're looking for is physical and mental robustness, flexibility, intelligence, loyalty. It's actually quite easy to find those qualities amongst the Gurkhas because their own society is hierarchical. It's a society where respect is automatically given to elders, to parents. Gurkha children do what their father tells them to do. Sadly, in our society, we've stopped doing that a long time ago.
Next.
It's a society where you are thrown back very much on yourself. There is no welfare state. Natural disaster is ever present. Earthquake, landslide, hailstorms, flooding, fire. Nobody is there to bail you out. You're thrown back on your own resources. And this produces a tough society. It produces a fatalistic society. Fatalism, if you're an infantry soldier, is a good thing to have because it means you don't worry too much about being shot. You are going to be shot or you aren't. And it is better to be shot gloriously and have your name live on down the generations than it is to stay at home or to run away.
Go! Good one.
For almost 100 years, the Gurkhas never fought outside India. But the 20th century was to bring two world conflicts. In the first, a plea from General Sir Ian Hamilton for them to help out at Gallipoli.
I am very anxious, if possible, to get a brigade of Gurkhas, the type of man who will, I am most certain, be most valuable on the Gallipoli Peninsula. The scrubby hillsides on the southwest faces of the plateau are just the sort of terrain where these little fellows are at their brilliant best. Each little Gurkh might be worth his full weight in gold at Gallipoli.
Chest number 452.
Gallipoli 1915 was a blood-chilling disaster. Thousands of Allied troops died, and senior heads rolled, including that of Hamilton himself. In a bitter disclaimer, he had praise for only one body of soldiers.
It is Sir Ian Hamilton's most cherished conviction that had he been given more Gurkhas in the Dardanelles, then he would never have been held up by the Turks.
Next. Chest number 20, 58.5.
Selection tests for candidate Gurkhas have hardly changed down the years. Even here, back in 1928, supply outweighed demand. The only difference then was the preservation of the top knot, the sprite of hair by which a stricken Gurkha's god could haul him into some Nepalese Valhalla. Some eccentricities have always been acknowledged, such as a Gurkha's problem about running from A via B to C in straight lines.
Once you come to this sort of flat area for running side, I think they got a problem because they don't have such a sort of a good piece of land out here to do sort of a running in a flat area.
They can't work on the flat. They can only operate on.
Or they can operate quite easily on up and down side, but it's very difficult for them to do the sort of running or any sort of physical fitness on the flat area side.
धन्यवाद. अब अर्को साललाई फेरि ट्राई गर्न पर्यो है. ल, थ्यांक यू भेरी मच भाइहरु. धन्यवाद. ल.
It's a dispiriting moment for the unsuccessful. Just 6 are going through to the next processing stage, but for the losers it's back to boring old Annapurna along Nepal's M1, the ancient spice road leading to Tibet. They remain trapped in a time warp, where the solitary hotel is not exactly the Himalaya Hilton, and only the animals appear pampered. For a dry martini, read Horlicks. But there's more to this place than meets the eye, and the reason is this man, Tal Bahadur Pun, who left here many years ago to join the Gurkhas. When eventually he returned, it was with the conviction that education is the key to life. He'd had none, only picking up rudimentary reading and writing when he joined the army. He came home determined that the village school should be extended, saying, "He who is without education will finish last." His words, for an exemplary reason, carried weight. He is one of 26 Gurkhas to have been awarded the Victoria Cross, the highest of all military decorations, and indeed which takes precedence over honours such as Knight of the Garter or the Order of Merit. On June the 23rd, 1944, fighting with the 6 Gurkha rifles against the Japanese in Burma, he found himself alone after his section comrades had been killed. His citation reads,
Rifleman Tul Bahadur seized the Bren gun and, firing from the hip as he went, continued to charge on the heavily bunkered position in the face of the most shattering concentration of automatic fire directed straight at him. With the dawn coming up behind him, he presented a perfect target to the Japanese. He had to move 30 yards over open ground, ankle-deep in mud, through shell holes and over fallen trees. Despite overwhelming odds, he reached the house and closed with the Japanese occupants.
He killed 4 with his gun and 3 with his kukri. Still, the citation didn't tell it all. When relief finally arrived, this benign-looking gentleman acquired a flamethrower and incinerated a further 30 Japanese in a dugout. He regarded this as appropriate reparation. But there's something of which he is even prouder, which he insists on showing to the world. His VC carries influence with the Gurkha Welfare Trust, and by using it he was able to install in his village a simple communal water tap. Paradoxically, only a few steps distant, there flows this river, highly photogenic but seriously polluted. Before the tap, every drop of drinking water had to be carried in from an uncontaminated source 8 miles away. The beauty of this place is sorely compromised by a poverty that the Welfare Trust strives to alleviate from limited resources.
Nepal is the 4th poorest country in the world. To give you an illustration of the deprivation, there's only 1 doctor to 20,000, a hospital bed to 1 to 9,000 people. There is no state welfare system apart from primary school, which is now being extended up to secondary school. And therefore, without any insurance scheme, without any welfare scheme, any hardship means that people become destitute, they can lose their homes and all means of livelihood. And therefore all our ex-servicemen, and indeed their dependents, look to us, the Gurkha Welfare Trust, to try and help them.
The tap was a gift from the gods, not just to ex-Gurkhas, but to entire communities. Forget splitting the atom or man's first step on the moon, this is reality. No more back-breaking, there-and-back treks for a cup of non-poisonous tea. Now it's only a matter of yards. The villages have nudged into the 20th century, and it's all down to the Gurkhas and the Gurkha Welfare Trust, which across the foothills of Nepal installs other new taps at the rate of 40 a year. From their forays into the hills, the Gurkha recruiting officers have selected the 700 candidates for further examination. They come to Pokhara. It's not exactly twinned with Las Vegas, yet for most of them it's already the thrill of a lifetime. It's the first high street they've seen. Then suddenly the gates of a new planet open up before them. This is the Gurkhas' recruiting depot. Order from chaos. Now they are tantalizingly close to a career that will provide clothes, food, world travel. They're very conscious of the traditions they have to live up to.
Our ancient Gurkhas fight for British Army bravely, so they give their life, but they don't give up their hands. So I think that's why this motto is given to Gurkhas. They don't give up till their life will go.
They don't give up till they die. He's also well acquainted with the Gurkhas' motto, even in English.
It is better to die than to be a coward.
This man is a Sherpa yak herder from the foothills of Everest. Not many Sherpas have Gurkha ambitions, so his main concern is how his family will react if he fails.
तिम्रो यदि भर्ती लागेन भने घर फर्किँदाखेरि आमा बाबाहरू है मन दुखाउनु हुन्छ कि अथवा तिमीलाई गाली गर्छ कि
गाली गर्छ त्यो त गाली गर्छ मन दुखान
Yes, his parent will be upset, and I think they will be quite angry as well, he thinks.
He's laughing now, but it's a serious matter. There are many Nepalese who regard being turned down by the Gurkhas as a disgrace on the entire family. Some rejects don't even go home again.
Yes, he will be quite afraid, but even so, then he must go back to his village.
The last lap to acceptance is rigorous and literally rock-strewn. A squad of Gurkhas once competed in a London marathon and finished hardly out of breath. It was a Sunday stroll compared with this. The competition is daunting. 57,000 initially applied to join the Gurkhas this year. 700 have reached this stage. Eventually just 153 will be chosen. The burden here is 45 pounds of stones. Tomorrow it will be increased to 75. Some find it disturbing that the elite of each generation leave to serve a foreign army. But not John Cross, an ex-Gurkha colonel who went back to live in Nepal and lectures at Kathmandu University.
What we don't do is we don't go into the mountains of someone else's country, take a fellow by the nose and say, you're going to be our soldier. It's entirely their volition. And whether it's hardship or the sense of adventure or because they can't get their act correct in their own country is of no concern to the recruiter who wants what he knows is good material. And if a Nepali, a high-ranking Nepali, for instance, might think it's wrong to give people to another country to fight, to lose blood, I can only tell you what Pandit Nehru, in his wisdom in the early 50s, said when the Indian Lok Sabha said, why should we have our country used as a passageway for these mercenaries going to the dreadful British Army, etc. And Pandit Nehru said, until the Nepalese can give as high a standard in Nepal to the people the British recruit, until that happens, I will let them through.
The 700 candidates have been whittled down to 400 and the tension is palpable. This is prize day, but for fewer than half of them. The final selection process is conducted outside the Gurkhas' compound. This is to thwart any remonstrance by rejects who feel they've been unfairly treated. The winners might have come up in the national lottery, which, when their indelible markings have been verified, they have. They can't wait to get in. A few rip off their coats or cheap wristwatches to give to a less fortunate friend. The British Army will now provide. By Nepali standards, they're now rich, insulated for life against everything except the winds of war. They will have fine uniforms and civilian clothes, good food, medical attention, and after 15 years, a pension. The passing into the compound is itself symbolic. acceptance into an exclusive club festooned with battle honours, renowned for bravery. A few of the rejected can rustle up that no hard feelings look. Well, maybe next year. Inside there is frantic, in some cases perplexing activity, writing farewell notes to the relatives they won't see for at least 3 years. They don't spring from an acquisitive society, but if they believed in Christmas, this would be Christmas Day. Off come the battered thongs, to be replaced by kit that for many will be the first words of English they'll ever speak.
Shoes Highlander, hey?
Shoes Highlander. Shoes Highlander.
SPT red. SPT green.
Vest, PT, green. It can now be a puzzling world. There is, for example, the ultimate challenge of new technology, the shoelace. Everything is an exciting discovery. But can they imagine what lies ahead?
It will change my life because we'll get something from British Army and we'll serve them. I'll help my family from poverty.
What does he expect England to be like? What does he hope to see there?
I think England is a very big city, big country. There are my big city. I like to see that cities. And I like to see that big buildings. In Nepal we don't have that kind of building. So I like to see that.
The Yak man already knows everything about England.
He says England is a development country, and he says it's very cold places.
Just what you'd expect from a chap who comes from Everest. Is there anything he wants to see?
He says that he would like to see the how is in the England the animals, what kind of animals are there. Saudis, yaks milk is made of by yak's milk.
In case English restaurants don't come up to scratch, he's brought his own food. Yak's milk cheese, hard as marble, though it doesn't taste as good. Old Army sweats will notice something missing here. No bawling, screaming or obscenity on the barrack square. There's a warm affinity between NCOs and men. The reason is that the men don't need to be motivated. They already are.
First time I reached to training depot, and my section commander was there, but I didn't know. And he called me up in a bad language. And I was surprised, yeah, really surprised. What sort of people are here who even don't know how to speak to the people? That is my experience.
All the section commander, they used to talk rude words. That I know that word. That's why. No, exciting.
Rude words?
Yeah.
Why do you think they did that?
Because if they call, if they don't use rude words, they cannot. They cannot make soldier from the civilian.
Equally, the British officers have to adapt to native Gurkha attitudes and customs. There's no place for patronising haughtiness.
Full nudity when you're washing is not tolerated at all. The boys, in fact, probably wash all the time with their swimming trunks on. You never point at anyone at any time. If you're pointing, you have to use your thumb. Or if you're pointing, someone asks you where something is, you'll see a lot of the Gurkhas pointing with their chin. Depending on how close or far away that is, if they're far away, they'll make a big gesture with their chin, and if they're close, they'll just jerk their head in their direction. There are other ones. You would never ever touch any of your soldiers' necks or shoulders, because they believe that in Nepalese tradition, if you touch someone else's neck or shoulders, then you'll make them be ill. They'd probably get a goiter or something growing on their neck. If you do inadvertently touch someone's neck, or have to for a reason, to get rid of the evil spirit that you've put into them, you have to blow on your fingers. Just a quick blow on your fingers afterwards.
At the end of their basic training, a pandit administers the oath of allegiance. They're mercenaries, they have a king of their own, and yet there's no more solemn moment in their lives. I swear I will be faithful and bear allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, in person and with dignity against all enemies. I will obey all orders of Her Majesty and of the generals and officers set over me. And they mean it. Under an aquiline stare, they are to come face to face, albeit by photograph, with the person to whom they have pledged their very lives. A few weeks ago, many of them were unaware even that the British monarch was a woman. They touched the Union flag in endorsement of their oath. Who knows what history has in store for them? One young Gurkha couldn't suppress a nervous giggle. He was brusquely admonished. But they do have a sense of humour.
A Gurkha would rather laugh than eat. Or that was the impression that we got. Most of them used to carry catapults, and they would hide. And as you went by, they would snipe you with their catapults. And if you shouted, "Idar Johnny, I can see you," you know, the little head would come out giggling, and then he would hold up his catapult as much as say, "This is what I did it with," you know, as if you didn't know. And you couldn't take offence. I mean, you just couldn't. It would have probably been very dangerous apart from anything else.
Back home, 3 square meals a day were a mirage. Now, this is the Savoy without the bill. On average, in the first year of training, each recruit grows 1.5 inches and puts on a stone, none of it fat. If you find the finger habit mildly off-putting, remember that they've only just got to grips with shoelaces. Knives and forks are on the agenda, but not yet. Anyway, it was only the other day, 1611 in fact, that knives and forks were introduced to England. But why are these men prepared to die for the British crown? It's simple, he says. We've eaten your rations. We've eaten your salt. The obligation is binding. Obviously, there are times in a soldier's life when room service is not available. For example, the Burma jungle in 1944, when the Japanese were being extremely tiresome. So for a while it was grilled beetles garnished with imagination. Their colonel-in-chief has suffered similar indigestion.
I've never forgotten one visit in Hong Kong. I think they were on an exercise in one of the sort of junglier parts of Hong Kong, where I was then invited to come and have lunch with them, I think, in the jungle. And I then found myself being given snake, which actually was one of the more disgusting things I think I've ever eaten.
They sleep on the floor because they always have. And unacquainted with EastEnders, Cilla Black or other icons of British culture, they spend their evenings singing songs about Himalayan mountains or hacking people's heads off. Local parents, others if they can afford the journey, drop into Pokhara for the farewells. There are also some enterprising young ladies. A Gurkha, even if he is off to Britain for the next 3 years, is a pretty good catch. But for some, the partings are the worst part of any adventure. Will he ever see his father again? Almost certainly, which is more than can be said for some of the rejected candidates down the years. Their sense of shame was so great that they came to this sinister bridge and threw themselves into the river below. They've now constructed anti-suicide nets. They may be leaving a Shangri-La film set, but they are also departing a world where to be aged and bent is to become a supplicant. This man fought with the Gurkhas in World War II. He did the dirty work. But because he didn't serve 15 years, he doesn't qualify for a British Army pension. Body and soul are now held together by the independent Gurkha Welfare Trust. Each month, he receives a £10 handout, sufficient for a few daily handfuls of rice. Nor had the Trust forgotten the widows of their former colleagues in arms. We're talking here of hardship, not hard luck stories. This Gurkha widow lost her husband just after the war and is about to lose the roof over her head. The house was lent to her by relatives who now want to sell it. To augment her £10 a month, she was still forced to work. But where now can she find it?
For 30 days, a month. But what she will do, she go to the riverside and collect the firewood from the riverbank. Normally in monsoon season, there are lots of them lying either side of the riverbank, and you can see her finger collecting piece of wood which lie either side of the riverbank, and then she can survive.
But the problem is obvious. The lady is getting old. The star at the festival of Tihar is a cow. It's plied with drink, probably Horlicks, and sweetmeats. The cow is sacred here, based on the theory that it's the provider of almost everything, from milk when it's living to leather when it's dead. The god Krishna declared the cow his favourite animal 1,000 years ago, which was fortunate. Without the cow, the Gurkhas would have never have become soldiers of international renown. This is the Lee Enfield Mark VI muzzle loader. Its cartridges were the problem, allegedly for being sealed with paper contaminated by cow grease. David Harding is an ex-Gurkha and Bisley champion.
The cartridge for the new rifle was greased at the bullet end. Inside this end of the cartridge there was a bullet of this shape. In this end there was enough powder for one shot. In the process of loading, the sepoy had to bite open the powder end with his teeth so that he could pour the powder into the muzzle. He then reversed the cartridge, pushed the bullet end in, tore off the empty part of the paper and rammed the bullet into the bore. And in the process of biting the cartridge, he would have come in closer contact than he cared for with the grease on the bullet end. The grease was, the rumour was, that it was composed of the fat of pigs and of cows. And the fat of pigs would have been objectionable to the Muslim sepoys, and the fat of cows would have been very objectionable to the Hindu sepoys. And contact with it, especially for higher caste Hindus, could cause serious loss of caste itself, and could cause social ostracism back in the home village.
The British government said, well, get your own grease. But high caste Indians were not to be mollified. They were itching for a fight, believing that the British were crushing their own cultures throughout the land. But the cow grease rumours still persisted. 150 years later, no such taboo was to deflect the young Gurkhas from the obvious venue for their first public meal in Britain. Burger, beef, one. These Gurkhas were serving with the British in India in 1857. At the musketry school in Ambala, they insisted on using the cow grease cartridge to distance themselves from the whinging Indian troops. But the cow grease rumour continued to fuel the bigger issue. India was seething with anti-British antagonism. The guns were primed for mutiny. Delhi, capital of the old Mughal Empire, was the scene of the bloodiest conflict. It was a rising of manic intensity and unspeakable atrocity. Officers were hacked to pieces, their wives, children and servants mutilated before death or thrown live into the city's wells. Major Charles Reed, commander of the Sirmaur battalion of Gurkhas, was among those ordered to head to the aid of his beleaguered British colleagues of the 60th Rifles. Within 4 hours, his relief column was on the way. But the 60th Rifles, pictured here in happier times, as they say, were apprehensive about the Gurkha involvement. Could they trust these Gurkhas, foreign troops after all? They were soon to learn. Fiercely loyal, brave to a man, the Gurkhas actually enjoyed their part in quelling the mutiny. Indeed, when word got abroad, they were accorded the highest of accolades, a rave review in the London Illustrated News.
The Fusiliers and a little Gurkha were sitting by a window when one of the enemy, who had concealed himself, popped his head out to see what was doing. He happened to look the other way when the little Gurkha, as quick as thought, whipped out his kukri and sliced his head off in an instant, to the great delight of the Fusiliers, who could not for 10 minutes shoulder their muskets for laughing. The kukris are kept very sharp, and I have seen a Gurkha cutting his corns at arm's length. It is not to be wondered at that these are the dread of the rebels.
The few surviving rebels continued to dread. They were simply tied to gun barrels and dispatched to join their holy cow in the sky. Among the heroes of the Gurkhas' action was Subadar Major Jesse Rajput, with medals. Never again would the integrity of these fighting men from Nepal be questioned. Their campaigns were commemorated on their chests, and such now was their reputation that Queen Victoria herself intervened, promoting them to a rifle regiment. But rifle regiments don't carry colours, so she presented them with a ceremonial truncheon.
The truncheon has been more than a regimental colour to us. In our language, it's called Nisani Mai. Literal meaning Nisani is a point, and Mai is mother, if not a goddess. So it's more like a goddess to us than a simple regimental colour.
It is a sad and nostalgic day at Sandhurst. This is the last parade of the 2nd Gurkha Rifles, bane of the Japanese, now victims of Whitehall defence guns.
All rifles, royal salute, raise and ho!
But to the Gurkhas, the truncheon which evokes such homage is not being laid up. It is being placed in suspended animation, against a day, perhaps generations ahead, when there may come another rallying call.
It's been so precious to us, and particularly for myself, having served in the regiment for 20 years. And if anybody would want to steal or take away from us, I wouldn't hesitate to draw my kukri and charge. Simple as that.
Officers past and present have come to pay their respects, and as another icon of British military history goes to the wall, some can't contain a sense of bitterness.
If we are to play our part in the United Nations, we should have troops available to answer that. The present rate of things, if the country were threatened, we'd probably have to send a policeman to Dover to stop the invasion coming in.
Even though she's not present in the regiment, she will always be in my heart, and every morning whenever I perform my religious prayers, I will think about Nishani Mai as well.
Ironically, as the old guard leaves, the new recruits land in Britain. They arrive in Gurkha fashion, smart and marching. None had flown before. They've come straight from Kathmandu to a world in which our obvious is their astonishment. You don't even need to walk here. Even the pavements move. From Gatwick Airport, they shut their eyes around the M25, always a sensible precaution, to their new home near Aldershot. What's going through their minds?
Well, I think it's probably a mixture, partly of delight that of the 57,000 applicants, they've been one of the only 153 that have been selected. And probably also a certain amount of amazement. In Nepal, they often talk of England or Balayat as the place where the gods live. They're now discovering that God lives in a rather cold, very wet environment, and that may be slightly puzzling.
Well, it's warm and dry in the Queen Elizabeth Barracks, Church Crookham, but there are some culture shocks. For most, it's their first night in a bed with springs and a mattress. Next day, there's the tricky introduction to the knife and fork. But as with their predecessors, the menu confronts no theological misgivings. Back home, they'd be eating rice and lentils, but the traditional English breakfast presents no problem. They're quick to learn. 2 years ago, these Gurkhas were also fumbling with knives and forks. Now they're in Bosnia, operating a sophisticated communication system for the United Nations. But for the new recruits, there is yet more to assimilate, not least the mystery of the urban traffic light.
You never see a Gurkha, scruffy, badly turned out. Look at them. And this is a day off, they're mufti, and they're always immaculate. They're a credit to their unit and to the British Army, mind you.
When they come here, they have an image of our society which probably hasn't existed for 50 years. They assume that all the British are Serbs, that there are no criminals in England, that everyone behaves in the way that they believe people ought to behave. That, of course, isn't the way that our society operates.
Unfortunately, getting money out of a wall requires some coaching. One of their number once entrusted his PIN number to a total stranger, then asked for assistance. In camp, they're being inducted into the use of the fundamental tool of their trade.
This is quite a big moment for them because this is the first time they will ever have fired a live round on the range. Today, and I haven't yet been to look at the targets, I would be surprised if there were many who had a group larger than an inch. Now that, at this stage, having never fired a round in their lives before, to get 5 rounds in a 1-inch group is actually very, very good.
What's their secret?
Good eyesight and doing exactly what they're told. They will absorb the instruction they're given, they'll follow it absolutely, they'll get their breathing right, they'll get their trigger operation right, they're patient, and they'll fire when they're ready to fire. They haven't seen Rambo films, they don't think they know it all. They're starting from scratch, and therefore they'll make very good shots. Well, that's what I was saying. So those are very, very good groups for the first time he's ever fired a shot in his life.
Right.
He's quite pleased with it, but he's sure he can improve. In fact, it is very, very good, I can tell you. It'd be quite difficult to improve on it. But I mean, that's 5 rounds straight between the eyes. Very happy. He says he's very happy to go and kill the enemy.
Again, here in Britain, the friendliness between Gurkha officers and men is immediately apparent.
One has to remember that a Gurkha unit, in a sense, is a company of equals. I command my men not because I'm a major, but because I have got more experience than they have. I have done more courses. I've been in the army longer. They respect me and they obey my orders. But we are a company of equals, and it would never occur to a Gurkha rifleman that there would be any social distinction between the two. If I go to Nepal, I will stay in a soldier's house. If a soldier brings his wife to England for a holiday, quite often she will come and stay in my quarter. And we have had situations in my married quarter where I've had a brigadier, a corporal and a rifleman all staying there at the same time, all with their wives. This is regarded as extraordinary by the rest of the army, but it works in our society, and the British officer has to be able to fit into that. There's no room for the arrogant, there's no room for the patronising, there is no room for the pompous, because that just doesn't wash with the Gurkha. The whole thing runs on mutual trust. I trust them and they trust me. We've got a high proportion of chaps who will have a go at anything and will claim to swim. Some of them will have had a go at swimming at home, largely because they're hoping to get into the army, and they will trek off to the nearest river and they'll jump into a pool and they'll either learn to swim or they'll drown. Fortunately, most of them appear to learn to swim, although it's very much doggy paddle. Again, it's easy to teach a Gurkha. I keep saying it's easy to teach Gurkha things, and it is, because he wants to. He's intelligent and he wants to learn. He also has great faith in the system. So when we say to a Gurkha, you are to jump into the swimming pool, which incidentally is 8 feet deep, do you understand that? Yes, now jump. He will jump, and he will do exactly what he's told to do, and he will therefore very quickly learn how to swim. And if he sinks to the bottom, we will fish him out and he'll do it again. And within a day or two, they'll all be swimming quite reasonably.
Everything is done to help them settle in. The yak man from Everest, for example, has been missing his yaks. So, on a neighbouring farm, he meets at least a Highland look-alike. Back in genuine yak country, there's a happy ending to a remarkable story. This is the Himalayan home village of the most celebrated living Gurkha. In May 1945, on the banks of the Irrawaddy River, rifleman Lachaman Gurung, here with friends, took on the Japanese literally single-handed. This was because he'd had his right arm blown off. Lachaman was also wounded in the face, chest and legs. He won the day alone and was awarded the Victoria Cross. Aged 78 now and walking with some difficulty, he wanted to move from the mountains to a house on the plain. There was an obvious cash flow problem. His income was £56 a month, supplemented by a gift of £100 every year from Eric Williams, a British Gurkha officer who'd fought in the same Irrawaddy action. Then he learned that his Victoria Cross, if offered for auction in a London sale room, could fetch up to £50,000. But where was it? Mrs. Latchman knew precisely. In 1951, his old Indian Army regiment had asked if they could borrow it and display it as an inspiration to their troops. Just 7 years ago, Latchman sent his 2 sons to India to retrieve it. They returned empty-handed. The Indians had offered to house him in India. Lachaman refused. "My home is Nepal," he said. And what would happen to my family when I die? The matter had been dragging on now for 44 years. A simple Nepalese hillman against a vast bureaucracy. Lacheman's old commander, General Sir Walter Walker, took up the case. There was a heated exchange of letters with the Indians, but still nothing came of it. So each month, Lacheman's son prepared for the journey down the mountain to collect his pension. No, he's not heavy, he said. How could he be? He's my father. The pride is understandable, for this is a citation of what his father did to win the Victoria Cross at the age of 17.
At Taungdaw in Burma, on the west bank of the Irrawaddy, on the night of the 12th, 13th of May, 1945, Rifleman Lacheman Gurung was manning the most forward post of his platoon. At 0120 hours, at least 200 enemy assaulted the company's position. The brunt of the attack was borne by Lacheman Gurung's section, and by his own post in particular. Before assaulting, the enemy hurled innumerable grenades at the position from close range. One grenade
A chemical agent is one which may be injurious to your body when it enters your system by being inhaled, eaten, or coming in contact with your skin. It could irritate, inflame, burn, destroy tissue, be absorbed into the bloodstream, or affect the body's functions. Any chemical agent employed in combat by the enemy will be powerful. It may last for hours or even days and produce a toxic environment. In order to survive in this environment, you will have to protect yourself against the injurious effects of the agent used and be able to give first aid to yourself and your buddies when necessary. To enable you to do this, the Army provides you with 4 items. These are a protective mask, protective clothing, a personal decontamination kit, and atropine injectors. The mask is your most important piece of equipment, and you are given special training in its use and care. It provides you with protection against inhaling chemical agents. When an attack with chemical agents is detected or suspected, you must mask immediately. Do not wait to receive an order or alarm. Mask at once when your position is hit by artillery or mortar fire, missiles, rockets, smoke, mists, aerial spray, or bombs. When you encounter smoke from an unknown source, when a suspicious odor, liquid or solid, is present, or when you are entering an area suspected of being contaminated. Remember these conditions, and when you encounter them, put on your mask immediately. In combat, you should also mask at once if you develop any of the following symptoms: an unexplained runny nose, a feeling of choking or tightness in your chest or throat, dimming of vision, irritation of your eyes or skin, difficulty in or increased rates of breathing without obvious reasons. Remember these 5 symptoms of chemical agent poisoning, and if you experience any one of them in combat, put on your protective mask immediately. When necessary, you will be issued protective clothing, dubbing for your boots, and other first aid items. But in the event your skin, clothing, or eyes are contaminated with a chemical agent, you must perform personal decontamination immediately. If you suspect any chemical agent droplets are in your eyes, you must decontaminate them as quickly as possible. To do this, you must flush out your eyes at once with water from your canteen. To flush your right eye, Tilt your head back and slightly to the right. Then, with your eyes looking upward, pour water into each eye slowly so that it will not run onto your face and clothing. If you cannot keep your eyes open, pull your eyelids away from your eyes with your fingers during this flushing. Decontamination consists of removing or neutralizing an agent or both before it causes serious injury. To enable you to do this, you will be issued this decontaminating and re-impregnating kit, which contains a skin decontamination pad, a single-edged cutting device encased in a plastic safety sheath, and cloth bags of a knit material which contains decontaminating and re-impregnating powder. Each bag also contains a crushable plastic capsule filled with a chemical agent detector dye. This is how these protective items are used. The skin decontaminating pad is filled with powder to blot and absorb liquid chemical agent from exposed skin surfaces. To use, take the plastic packet from the case and tear it open. Then remove the skin decontaminating pad. Unfold it and fit it over your fingers, like this. Using the portion of the pad on the back of your hand, now blot all visible spots from your exposed skin. Then, using the palm side, dust the exposed skin, including skin folds, and rub the powder over the skin surface. In decontaminating your face, do not get any of this powder in your eyes. The cutter is packed with the skin decontaminating pad. It is used to cut away heavily contaminated areas of clothing. The powder-filled bags are used in decontaminating clothing. To use, remove the plastic container from the kit, open it, and take out one of the cloth bags. Locate the chemical agent detector dye capsule inside of the bag with your fingers and crush it between your fingers or the palms of your hands. Then knead the bag with your fingers for approximately 1 minute to thoroughly mix the dye with the decontaminating and re-impregnating powder. Use the full contents of one bag to decontaminate your clothing. Dust all outer surfaces of your gloves and lightly rub the powder into the gloves with the bag. The chemical agent detector dye that you have mixed with the powder produces a red or brown color when it comes in contact with liquid agents. While dusting and rubbing, inspect for red or brown spots, which indicate areas heavily contaminated with liquid agent. Dust all of your outer clothing with the cloth bag and rub the powder in lightly. But if a large number of widely scattered red or brown spots appear, do not attempt to decontaminate the clothing further. Instead, remove and discard it as quickly as possible. Use the buddy system to decontaminate areas you cannot see or reach. Have your buddy help you, and you help him, for all of your clothing must be carefully covered. These are the things you must do to properly decontaminate yourself after exposure to any chemical agent, using your canteen water and M13 kit. Atropine, which you have in your protective mask carrier, is a drug which is used to relieve the symptoms of nerve agent poisoning. In a combat situation, you will have with you 3 atropine auto-injectors like these. These will be carried in your protective mask carrier. The auto-injector is a hard plastic tube containing atropine and an injection needle, which is triggered by a coiled spring. To use it, remove the wrapper and hold the tube in your clenched fist with the yellow safety catch extending above your thumb. Then pull out the yellow safety cap and extend the arm until the hand falls naturally against the thigh. Press the green end of the tube hard against the outside of your thigh to release the needle. Wait 5 seconds and remove the needle with a quick pull. Because of the emergency life-saving nature of the act, atropine may be administered through clothing. A surprise attack with chemical agents may be visible or invisible, depending upon the method of dissemination. Nerve agents such as GA, GB, GD, B, and others are among the most likely chemical agents to be employed. These are usually clear, colorless liquids which evaporate to form invisible clouds. Recognizing the symptoms produced may be the only way you will have of knowing that a nerve agent is being used. The initial symptoms are a sudden, runny nose, possible dimness of vision, tightness in your chest, and difficulty in breathing. With only these symptoms, you should be able to treat and protect yourself. Advanced symptoms of nerve agent poisoning are drooling and sweating, nausea, vomiting, or cramps, twitching, jerking, or staggering, headaches, confusion, or drowsiness, coma, convulsions, or stoppage of breathing. With these nerve agent symptoms, a casualty will need help. Nerve agents can enter the body anywhere, inhaled through the nose and mouth, or absorbed through the eyes, or breaks in the skin. They take effect very quickly. When absorbed through unbroken skin, nerve agents do not take effect as quickly, but the effects are the same. They act upon the muscles of your body through the nervous system, both the voluntary muscles which obey your commands and the involuntary muscles, such as those which regulate your breathing, circulation, and digestion, over which you have little or no control. Nerve agents seriously disrupt the functioning of these muscles in this way. On the left is a normal nerve ending. On the right, a normal muscle. When a nerve impulse is transmitted to the muscle, a chemical substance called acetylcholine is released. This triggers muscle contraction. After such nerve-triggered muscle action, a second chemical called cholinesterase is released and causes the muscle to relax. This normally terminates the muscle action. However, nerve agents knock out the cholinesterase and allow an excess of acetylcholine to accumulate. As a result, the muscle contraction, which is stimulated by the acetylcholine, continues. It becomes excessive and out of control. The muscle cannot relax and literally contracts itself to death. The drug atropine blocks the effects of the accumulated acetylcholine and thereby helps control this excessive muscular contraction. Atropine prevents part of the action of the acetylcholine by building a barrier around the muscle. This eliminates further stimulation and allows the muscle to relax. However, nerve agents work fast, and thus the atropine must be injected quickly so that it can go to work before the muscles become paralyzed. This is how it's done in a combat situation. A squad position comes under attack. Immediately, most of the men remember to stop breathing and put on their protective masks without waiting to receive an order or alarm. But one man does not. Moments later, he is having difficulty in breathing and feels a tightness in his chest. His nose is running. Suddenly, he remembers what these symptoms indicate: nerve agent. Now he has taken the first step in protecting himself against a chemical attack. But he has the symptoms which indicate that the nerve agent has already reached his system. He needs atropine to overcome the effects of the nerve agent. He immediately gives himself an atropine injection. To keep track of the number of injections, each empty injector should be attached to the outer clothing. This can be done by inserting the needle through the clothing and bending it to form a hook. "10 to 15 minutes after the first injection, if the initial symptoms are still present, a second atropine injection should be given. Approximately 10 minutes later, this casualty is breathing easier, and there is a dryness in his mouth. This dryness means that the atropine is overcoming the dangerous effects of the nerve agent. Until this dryness of the mouth is present, atropine injection should be continued every 10 to 15 minutes until the casualty has given himself a total of 3 injections. Additional atropine will not be given without the approval of the individual in charge or medical personnel. Other members of the patrol were not as lucky as the man we have just seen. The blast knocked this man unconscious, causing his mask to leak, and he has been badly affected by the nerve agent. He is in deep trouble and shows advanced symptoms of nerve agent poisoning. For him, atropine alone will not be enough. He needs help from a buddy, and he needs it fast. This is what to do. First, turn the casualty so that he lies on his back. At this stage, he will be breathing with great difficulty or not at all. Every second counts. Clear the mucus and other foreign matter from his mouth with your fingers so he will not choke. Next, give him an atropine injection. And immediately begin artificial respiration by means of the M1 resuscitation tube. You place the mouthpiece between the casualty's lips and teeth and secure it in place by forming a seal over the lips with your thumb and index finger. The other 3 fingers are hooked under the casualty's chin to keep his jaw in a jutting out position. Then with your free hand, pinch his nose closed. Take a deep breath and blow into the breathing tube bite piece. When the casualty's chest rises, stop blowing and release his nose, thus allowing him to exhale. As soon as the casualty exhales, pinch his nose closed again, and the cycle is repeated at a rate from 12 to 20 breaths per minute. When the casualty is able to breathe without assistance, remove the resuscitation tube from his mouth and quickly replace his protective mask. If mask-to-mouth resuscitation is not available, and since mouth-to-mouth cannot be performed in contaminated air, the chest pressure method is the alternative choice. Move his head back and grasp his arms just above the wrist and place them over his lower ribs. Then rock forward and exert steady, uniform pressure to force the air out of the casualty's lungs. Move his arms outward and upward above his head as far as possible. This draws air back into his lungs. Repeat this cycle 10 to 12 times per minute at a steady, uniform rate. Whichever method of artificial respiration is used, the important thing is to maintain an even, regular rhythm as close as possible to that of normal breathing. If another person is present, he can take over, being careful not to break the rhythm. And even though it may take some time for normal breathing to be restored, don't give up. It is essential that the air passages be kept free of fluid. If fluid accumulates in the mask, it should be emptied out, and the mouth should be cleared of mucus and foreign matter before the mask is replaced. When the air is no longer contaminated, the order to unmask is given. Now, mouth-to-mouth artificial respiration can be used. This is always the preferred method in uncontaminated air. Remember that a dry sensation in the mouth or an increase in the heartbeat to approximately 160 beats per minute are signs that sufficient atropine has been given. Additional doses of atropine may be given if the officer, non-commissioned officer, or individual in charge so directs. As soon as possible, the casualty should be inspected for the presence of liquid nerve agent. If any is discovered, he should be decontaminated. This applies to everyone who has been subjected to a nerve agent attack. As soon as the mission permits, troops should inspect themselves and each other for signs of contamination using the buddy system and performing the decontamination procedures which you have seen. This is how you must react to protect yourself against nerve agents. In addition to nerve agents, there are others which may be encountered in combat, such as blister agents, which include mustards and arsenicals. The mustard-type agents do not cause pain, but arsenicals and phosgene oxime produce immediate pain. Relatively low doses of blister agents may be serious, for they can cause injury to the eyes, lungs, and skin. Decontamination for all blister agents is the same. It is especially important to flush your eyes immediately when contamination is suspected. Against mustard agents, this must be completed within 2 minutes to avoid serious damage. Then, with your skin decontamination pad, decontaminate your face, first blotting up any agent droplets, and then rubbing the powder over the skin surface, taking care not to get any of the powder in your eyes. Using your skin pad, be sure to decontaminate the portion of your mask which came in contact with your face before putting it back on. With your mask in place, apply powder to your exposed skin using the skin decontaminating pad. This should be done at once, for the longer the blister agent is in contact with your skin, the more serious the injury will become. Use the buddy system to decontaminate all areas which you cannot reach or see. This is what happened to one man who did not follow first aid procedures. Prompt action on your part can avoid such consequences. If blisters form, cover them with a loose, sterile dressing and secure with a bandage. Avoid breaking the blisters and seek medical treatment. Another type of chemical agent may be encountered in combat. When you notice a sudden increase in your breathing, an odor like bitter almonds, or irritation of your eyes, nose, or throat, put on your mask immediately, for these are the indications of blood agent poisoning. Blood agent has rendered this man helpless. He needs assistance. With a blood agent casualty, the first thing to do is to get his mask on. After his mask is on, take 2 amyl nitrite ampules, break them, and place them inside the casualty's mask at the eyepiece. If the casualty's breathing is weak or he is not breathing at all, begin artificial respiration. Every 4 or 5 minutes, repeat the dosage of 2 ampules of amyl nitrite. Between each dosage, continue artificial respiration. Do this until normal breathing returns, or until a total of 8 ampules have been used. No more than 8 should be given. There is another chemical agent which may be encountered in combat. This is the incapacitating agent. An incapacitating agent is any compound which can interfere with the performance of military duties, does not endanger life, and produces no permanent injury. These agents will probably be disseminated as a burning munition or aerosol. They will therefore make their entry through your breathing. Your mask is therefore essential for protection against these agents. Individual reactions on exposure to incapacitating agents will vary. Some men will become extremely listless, uncoordinated, and indifferent to everything about them. Others will cry and become completely dejected and despairing. Still others will become overly aggressive and want to fight their buddies or anyone else in sight. There is no special first aid for the relief of the symptoms of incapacitating agents, although normally, over a period of time, the symptoms will gradually disappear, leaving no organic damage to the affected individual. Physical restraint may be required. Weapons and other potentially harmful materials should be removed from the reach of a casualty. Delirious casualties have been known to attempt to eat items bearing only a slight resemblance to food. This is how to protect yourself in combat from an enemy chemical attack. Remember that chemical agents can affect you by being inhaled, eaten, or coming in contact with your skin or eyes. Remember the symptoms that indicate a chemical attack: an unexplained runny nose, a feeling of choking or tightness in your chest or throat, possible dimness of your vision, irritation of your eyes or skin, difficulty in or increased rates of breathing without obvious reasons. Remember to put on your protective mask immediately when a chemical agent attack is detected or suspected. Do not wait to receive an order or alarm. Put on your mask at once when your position is hit by artillery, mortar fire, missiles or rockets, smoke or mists, aerial spray or bombs. When smoke from an unknown source is present. When a suspicious odor, suspicious liquid or solid is present. Or when you are entering an area suspected of being contaminated. If you are subjected to a chemical attack, remember to decontaminate yourself as soon as your mission will permit. And never forget the necessity of atropine injections to overcome the effects of nerve agents or the use of amyl nitrate against blood agents. Keep in mind that a seriously affected chemical agent casualty will need help in breathing. Give him artificial respiration and maintain an even, regular rhythm as close as possible to that of normal breathing. Remember these elements of first aid and decontamination procedures for chemical agents, and in any combat situation be ready to use them. This is your responsibility to yourself.
Technology is on the rise, and who knows how far it will go.
If my goggles don't deceive me, that's you sitting across from me.
I'm David Pogue, and on this episode of Nova Science Now,
oh wow,
I'm peering into the future to find out
he walks!
If robots can learn how to walk, will they become our constant companions?
My dream is to have robots living with us in our home.
Could wearable robots give us superhuman strength?
I can actually put my weight on the structure while you're wearing it, and you don't feel it.
And transform our lives.
The boundary between a person and robots is already starting to change.
And
my God! I can control this thing with my mind!
Is it possible for a machine to read your mind?
I am a superpower!
And reveal your innermost secrets?
The computer is correct!
What if all of our thoughts were public? Lying would go away. It's sort of like a mental nudist colony.
Where is all this leading us?
Oh! Domino bots!
I'm exploring the good.
So now you can walk? That's mind-blowing.
The bad.
Not every advance is progress. Not every new thing is better
for us humanly.
And the not-so-pretty side of technology. All to find out,
Whoa, that's scary.
what will the future be like?
And he gave me a dirty look.
Up next on Nova Science Now. When we think about the future, one of the first things that comes to mind is the robot. Like those droids in Star Wars that tirelessly fulfill our every need. But how close are we to the sci-fi dream of robots that seamlessly fit into our world? Humanoid robots that look and act like us.
Your second round, sir.
Here at Virginia Tech, roboticist Dennis Hong believes that day will come only when robots master an incredibly complex skill. Something that's very difficult for them to learn, but comes naturally to us. Walking.
Oh, man. So again, nobody's controlling anything, and if you look at his head, you can see that he's looking around. So he's trying to figure out where he is in the soccer field.
He may be short, he may be skinny, but he walks.
And can even kick a soccer ball.
Go!
Wouldn't it be simpler to build something with treads, like on a tractor or something?
It's a very good question. Some people say we can do things with wheels.
That's right.
But my dream is to have robots living with us in our home.
And to do that, they need to climb stairs, open doors, take out the trash, and clean up the dishes.
If you want to have these type of robots living with us in an environment designed for humans, then I say that the robot needs to be the shape of a human being.
So you're acknowledging that it's a much more difficult task
Yes.
to make a humanoid robot that walks, but you're saying the payoff will one day be worth it.
Absolutely.
Dennis hopes that in the future, humanoid robots, they'll do jobs that are risky for us to do.
Dirty, dangerous task.
Like cleaning up after a chemical plant leak, helping people out of harm's way, or fighting fires.
Humanoid robots are really great for those kind of things. Real useful tasks and actually save people's lives.
How do you transform metal, motors, and microchips into a machine that can walk on two legs?
All right, so Dennis, this is your home robot construction kit.
Yes, this is the robot cooking show, as a matter of fact.
Cooking show?
You'll be making one of these.
Oh, wow.
This is called Darwin OP.
Darwin is a pint-sized humanoid robot that Dennis created back in 2004. A research platform he uses to find out what it takes for a robot to walk on its own 2 feet.
This is all the parts you need.
Man.
And you are going to put it together today.
Yeah, right.
Are you ready?
No. This is not Lego, let me tell you. We'll start out with the M4.
To create Darwin, Dennis took his clues from nature. Number 1, he needs to see. As you walk, you use your eyes to assess your environment. Darwin sees the world through this tiny webcam.
Actually, the eyes, the big ones, are just fake. The nose is actually the camera.
Wait, so you're saying that all this is just cosmetic?
Those are not the eyes.
Oh, you're such a...
We cheated.
Number 2, he needs a sense of balance. As you shift your weight from one foot to the other, your inner ear is able to sense the change in your position and keep you from falling. Darwin gets this ability from a sensor in this circuit board.
These two small things, these are the balance sensors, so it knows its orientation and direction.
Okay. That
So-
seems to want to fit right here.
You're good at this. You've done this before?
Thousands of times.
Even if Darwin can see and balance, he still can't move without muscles and joints. Number 3, your muscles are your body's engine. You can't move without them. Darwin moves with the help of actuators.
For each moving joint, we have one of these actuators. There's basically electric motor.
A motor that converts electrical energy into motion. And that gives Darwin the ability to move.
All right.
Yeah, we've done. Yeah.
We have arm!
Yay!
As for his sense of touch, he gets it from these 4 little sensors on the bottom of his feet. Hours later, I'm finally finished.
Tell me that's the last step.
You're almost done. Now you need to attach the arm to the rest of the body. And that's the last step. Hello, I'm Darwin.
It's adorable. I can already feel him
Seeking world domination. Because he still needs a brain. And that's where roboticist Dan Lee comes in.
The first thing we're going to show you is how the robot uses its vestibular sense, which is its sense of balance.
Vestibular from the word vestibule, which is one of the things in our ears.
Exactly, inside your inner ear. And so without using its vestibular sense, what would happen if we pushed the robot?
All right.
It just will fall over and then get back up.
Wow, that's pretty cool right there.
So, go ahead. Exactly.
Wow.
So now what we've done is we've trained this robot using something called reinforcement learning. So exactly what you just did, we kept pushing the robot over and over, and it was now able to figure out that every time it fell down, it was kind of a form of punishment.
When Darwin falls, his software gets an electronic signal that basically says, this is bad. After being bullied around hundreds of times, he finally learns it's better to do this.
Fall over. Oh, no!
So the hundreds of different reps are so that it can learn from this angle, and this angle, and this hard, and this hard, and this hard.
Exactly.
I see. Dan's even teaching his robots to learn through imitation.
We will rock you.
This camera detects my body's movement and sends that information to Darwin's software, which quickly translates it into a copycat movement of his own. You'd think with all this sophisticated software, Darwin would be able to keep up with me.
Look forward! Oh, so sorry!
But he can't.
Just trying to make a robot walk stably is ridiculously difficult. I won't say impossible, because I don't like that word, but it's a very, very difficult challenge.
All right, so David?
Yet we're masters at it.
Come on in.
Wow, what are you doing here? And engineer Thurman Lockhart is trying to figure out why. He's built this strange-looking device to analyze not just how we walk, but how we avoid falling. And I'm about to try it out. But first, I need to suit up. Thurman's outfit is filled with sensors that measure how far, how fast, and in which direction I move. Can't decide if I feel more like a superhero or a Broadway dancer.
Both. And we're going to have to wear a headband as well.
This is just an elaborate prank to humiliate me on television, isn't it? The little white balls are part of an optical motion capture system that instantly creates a stick figure of me.
You can't tell from the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man. No time to talk.
Next, I'm put in a harness because it's time to take a stroll through Thurman's obstacle course.
That's good.
After walking back and forth several times, suddenly...
Oh, good.
The hell?
Did you feel that a little bit?
Did I feel it? He made the earth shake under my feet. But check out what happens when I do this a second time. I handle the jolt much better.
Good.
My body and brain have already integrated thousands of pieces of information in a flash.
You ready?
That's because we have the exceptional ability to adapt to sudden changes in our environment. Walking is a skill that took millions of years for us to develop. And when you think about it, it still takes each of us about a year to go from floppy, to crawling, to waddling, and finally mustering the skills and courage to walk on our own 2 feet. And we never stop learning how to adapt to the many obstacles we confront every day. So walking is not just more complex than I thought, it's much more complex than I thought. And if you wanted to design a robot that could walk as well as a person, I mean, this would be fantastically complicated software. I mean, it would have to be doing billions of calculations with every step.
It is amazing that we are able to do it almost innately and without really even thinking about it.
Dennis Hong hopes that in the future, his robots will be able to master this extraordinary human skill. And they're learning how to do it one kick at a time. Every year, hundreds of teams from around the world compete at Robo Cup Soccer, a competition designed to foster research in robotics and artificial intelligence.
To make a autonomous soccer-playing robot, you really need to solve all the grand challenges, the really difficult problems in robotics. Robot vision, autonomous behavior, bipedal walking and running in the future. All of these needs to be solved to truly build a soccer-playing robot.
But what comes naturally to us comes a lot harder for Dennis's robots.
Domino bots. Think you're pretty good at soccer? I'm better. I can do this. Whoa, that's scary. He got right back up, and he gave me a dirty look.
Despite his robot's shortcomings, Dennis is optimistic.
By the year 2050, we want to have these type of full-size autonomous robots play soccer against the human World Cup champions and win.
You're going to have robots playing humans, and you expect them to win?
Yep.
All right, here, $20. Here you go.
$20, there you go.
While this may sound like a sci-fi fantasy, many experts believe that humanoid robots could progress a lot faster than we think. Sophisticated robots are already building our cars. Pretty soon, they could be serving us drinks and even doing the laundry. In Japan, where the aging population is growing faster than in any other country, researchers are developing robots to care for the elderly, from bathing them to moving them. And one day, they may even babysit our kids, a job that has always required a human touch. Sherry Turkle, a researcher at MIT who's written several books about the effects of technology on humans, is concerned about our future relationship with robots.
It's too easy to look at them and say, oh, they're not there yet. Well, they will get to something very powerful that we will want to hang out with. And then you have to say, well, where will we have gotten to? Why is that something that we want to develop?
And in the future, robots won't just be taking care of our kids. They may become a part of us, literally merging with the human body and transforming both of us into something in between.
Wow.
At Exobionics, they're developing a robot that could restore our ability to walk.
This is our exoskeleton. So you can see it's a robot. Somebody get them up and walking again.
You're breaking a few speed limits there.
A movement from my pelvis down. There's nothing.
So crutches, no good?
No, I can't move my legs.
But in the future, that could change with the help of a wearable robot.
Wow, is it standing you up now?
Yeah, because I couldn't do that on my own.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. So now you can stand and you can walk?
Yes.
This I gotta see.
Let's do it. The exoskeleton is intelligent enough that it senses my center of gravity, and also when I shift my weight over to a foot, then it triggers another step.
So Amanda shifts her body like you or I would to take a step, and sensors pick up that intent.
That sends a message to this onboard computer, which tells the exoskeleton it's time to take another step. Right now, the exoskeleton works only on flat surfaces, but one day, these researchers hope Amanda will be able to use it anywhere, even walking upstairs. And they aren't just helping people like Amanda. They may help average Joes like me with this.
So David, here we have the Hulk exoskeleton.
It's like a
The Hulk is designed to help people carry heavy loads, and it would come in really handy if you happen to be a firefighter. How much weight do these guys have to lug?
All right, pants. 10 pounds.
Okay. Boots.
2
Let's
pounds.
go to maybe a little jacket here, so another 8 pounds.
All right.
Breathing apparatus.
30 pounds.
Yep.
Whoa!
You can't fight a fire without hoses.
Oh, jeez.
That's 50 pounds of hoses.
I've got 100 pounds of equipment on me.
Is it heavy?
Is it heavy? It's 100 pounds.
Your buddy's up on the 3rd floor of the building. You're going to need some
No.
more air.
Oh, jeez. Wait a minute. No firefighter would go in like this. Come on.
They do what it takes.
Okay, I'm going to break your scale. I hope you don't mind.
You're carrying an extra 130 pounds of weight.
I'm carrying 130 pounds, and I'm supposed to put a fire.
That's right.
Wow. All right, so you've made your point. This is unbearable.
And here's where the Hulk comes in.
And then this structure actually surrounds your body. The idea is to take all the weight you put on it all the way down to the ground, completely bypassing you. All the weight that you put on that external skeleton actually bypasses the user that's inside and taking that weight to the ground. So they don't actually feel the weight that they're carrying.
Not only that, the Hulk is also designed to increase your strength.
What I'm going to do is turn it on. Now you can actually feel a little bit of power.
Oh, I see. It's picking itself up.
It's picking itself up.
So this is going to be my thigh, and when my thigh moves, that triggers it to start helping.
Right. And this is at our very lowest setting.
Turn on to the highest setting. Let me see what happens.
Try that.
Whoa! Hey, that works.
Now I put on the Hulk and get loaded up again.
Ready for the hoses?
Yeah, this is what killed me before. Go ahead and put on the hoses, Dave. These are different hoses.
Same hoses.
That's amazing. I feel nothing. It's like you might have well have put it on the roof of my house.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me
And
at
that's
all.
the idea. I can actually put my weight on the structure while you're wearing it, and you don't feel it.
That's amazing.
So all the weight bypasses you, comes down that torso, down these titanium legs, all the way into the ground, so you actually don't feel that weight.
All right. Now should I try walking?
Yeah,
Please.
give it a try.
It takes some getting used to.
There are fractions of a second where I suddenly feel really heavy. And then the robot says, oh, here, I can help you, pal. And it takes some of the weight off.
Over. Yep.
Wow. Don't worry, ma'am. I'll save you. That's what I'm here for, man. Give me your hand. David Pogue is backtracked.
The boundary between a person and robots is already starting to change. Lots of people have mechanical hips, and then people have electronic interfaces to their cochlea. We are going to merge with our machines more and more. We're already merging with our machines.
In the future, will wearable robots like this give almost anyone a leg up?
You know, no one looking at us would ever know that you're a paraplegic and I'm a skinny nerd.
It's hard to imagine just how much robots may change our world. Mind reading! It's a timeless fantasy that's shown up in science fiction and movies for decades. But now, scientists may finally be figuring out how a machine could read your mind. And for the very first time, mind-reading headsets are becoming real.
You really want to just slowly imagine the cube fading out into that black.
Look what I can do to the orange cube without touching any dials or keyboards, but just thinking, disappear.
My God! I can control this thing with my mind!
Tan Li is an entrepreneur with a headset that must be reading my mind.
We have to actually train the system.
Because she's turned it into the ultimate remote control. Just by thinking commands, I can make the orange cube on a computer lift, I can start this car, and launch this helicopter. The future is going to be awesome.
I am a superpower!
So how does this contraption work?
Is it mind reading?
I wouldn't say necessarily mind reading.
The headset doesn't actually hear my thoughts, but its 14 electrodes do pick up patterns of electrical activity coming from my brain waves. Brain cells communicate with each other by firing off tiny chemical and electrical signals. And whenever I think something like disappear, a particular pattern of brainwaves is generated. The headset picks that up.
So as the neurons inside your brain fire up, the signal gets weaker and weaker as it travels through and then gets projected onto the surface of the scalp.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's
Okay.
very, very faint.
So they're not thoughts, it's not mind reading, it's like the echo of neural activity deep in my brain.
That's right.
Even though it's just an echo, the signal is good enough for the computer to recognize a simple brain pattern once it learns it, like lift. And voila, it's reading my mind.
Can you imagine? I mean, in some future world where everything is hooked up to this, I could just make anything happen just by wishing it.
Or at least, that's what I was hoping. Until Tan Li tells me this headset can easily be confused. In other words, wrong.
If you were wearing this all day long, I can imagine instances when you might have a brain pattern that's very similar to when you were thinking about disappear, and it may trigger that same action.
You mean things might happen when I'm not wishing them to?
That's right.
Any mind reader that relies on electrodes on the surface of the scalp is bound to be imperfect, because what it hears is a mere echo of my brain cells firing. But what if we could tap directly into the brain? That's what they're attempting here at Brown University. Kathy Hutchinson is paralyzed from a stroke, but she's controlling a robotic arm with much more precision than any headset would allow, thanks to sensors that have been implanted directly onto the surface of her brain. Kathy made headlines when she played a crucial role in a groundbreaking mind-reading experiment. She simply thought about reaching out to pick up a cup of coffee. The sensors in her brain picked up electrical impulses, and a computer turned them into commands, controlling the robotic arm. It's an astonishing breakthrough for brain science that offers hope for the paralyzed. I went to see John Donahue, one of the heads of the BrainGate team at Brown, to find out how they turned mind into motion.
This is a model, right? No, this is a real human brain with its spinal cord attached.
Come on!
This is an adult brain. This is, it's the right size to fit inside your head.
John's been working toward a machine that can tap into our brains for more than 20 years.
The problem is really quite immense. We had to know where in the brain the signals are, but we've known that. If you follow back a little distance behind the middle of the brain and you run into this little bump, this is the marker for the arm, this little twist, and that little twist is the place, the gross anatomical landmark for where your arm is actually controlled.
So every time you move your arm, first, this one little spot on the brain says go and sends signals to a particular set of muscles, and then the arm moves.
The next problem is how do you get that signal? And we need to have a sensor. We need to have something that can pick those signals up. So we've developed this microelectrode array, which is extremely tiny.
The size of a baby aspirin, the microelectrode with 100 tiny probes was implanted on the spot in Kathy's brain that controls the arm. Still, turning the signals into clear instructions for the robot wasn't easy.
So this seems to be the arm. This is the one that I saw in the video of Kathy Hutchinson controlling it with her brain.
Yeah, that's right. This is one of the two arms that she was using.
Wow. And so how does it work exactly? How do you...
Well, why don't you give it a try?
Okay.
To demonstrate how incredibly complex the brain's control of movement really is, neuroscientist Lee Hochberg asked me to try to move this robot arm with a joystick.
Right. Oh, on the white rug, too.
All right.
Oh, dear.
Try again.
It would be so much easier if I only had a brain.
Stop, stop! It's taking over! It's an uprising!
Almost.
I can see
So
it takes
close.
practice, yeah.
It takes some practice.
So if such simple commands are difficult, imagine how hard it would be to actually read complex thoughts. Could a machine ever do what the amazing Kreskin used to claim to do on his classic 1970s TV show?
His birthday fall on March the 6th?
Yes.
Thank you very, very much for starting, man.
I hear that this could be the mechanical Kreskin. And it's not a magic trick. It's a 9-ton MRI at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Psychologist Marcel Just and computer scientist Tom Mitchell use the MRI to peer directly into the brain as it works.
Hi David, how you doing? In this study, you're going to see labeled pictures of objects.
While I ponder the objects projected onto a screen, the scanner isn't reading brain waves or electricity. Instead, it's measuring the flow of oxygen-rich blood in my brain to detect exactly which parts are active when I think about different objects.
Okay, great job, David. We'll come and get you in 1 second.
When you think of something, your brain activates in those places that correspond to your interactions with it.
Like if I think of, skyscraper, is there an area of the brain for skyscraper pictures?
If you think of a skyscraper, you actually think of many things. You might think of a very tall thing. You might think of the material. You might think of going inside of it. What we'll see in the brain is a whole collage, and put together, it becomes the signature for skyscraper.
The team has already identified the areas in the brain that activate for shelter, for food, and for holding something in your hand.
It's not like a dictionary definition. It's kind of an experience definition.
By studying my brain scans, can their mind-reading computer guess what I was thinking?
So I saw 20 pictures flash before me, and on each one, I thought about it, imagined it, envisioned it. So how do we know if the computer knew what I was thinking?
The computer is going to take pairs of those words.
The mind-reading computer is given a pair of my brain scans. One when I was thinking of a grape, the other of a cave. But which is which? If the shelter area of my brain lights up, the computer guesses I was thinking cave. Since the other scan shows activity in the food and handling areas, it guesses that a grape was on my mind. And was it right?
The computer is correct! Number one.
Picking between two words, the computer's chances are 50-50. But can it keep it up?
2 for 2.
All right.
Oh, you got 9 correct. And the 10th was correct also! Nicely done, 10 out of 10! That is unbelievable!
For all 10 pairs, the computer gets it right. And that's pretty impressive. It's a far cry from walking down the street with a device that could read the everyday thoughts of passersby, but it's enough to have some experts on the future concerned.
Whenever you're starting to talk about the integrity of the body, the integrity of the mind, and being able to somehow violate that in any way, it becomes scary.
I'm sure there are many people right now going, oh my God, take away their funding! I don't want to have my mind read. I want my innermost thoughts to remain innermost.
What if all of our thoughts were public? Lying, for example, would go away. It's sort of like a mental nudist colony.
Well, here's one way to think of it. Like any big technology, there are all kinds of ways you can use it. And here you could use it for some pretty amazing things. There are also things that none of us would want to do. It's a good time now to begin thinking of those and thinking about what kind of guidelines we want to put in place.
Our world is rapidly changing. Let's say I'm in an unfamiliar neighborhood and I get lost. Just a few years ago, I would have spent hours wandering around. Today, all I have to do is pick up my smartphone. An app like New York Subway shows me if there are stations nearby and even shows me which way to walk to get there. If I need something translated, no problem. WordLens replaces the text in my view with my own language. And in the future, will it be possible for us to do this? Get information about anyone in an instant? A paradigm shift is taking place right before our eyes. The real world and the virtual are merging. It's called augmented reality, and you can experience it with the help of hundreds of apps on your smartphone. But one day soon, companies like Google, the internet search giant, think all this information will be delivered in revolutionary new ways.
This is Glass, a very different type of computing and communication device.
Think of Google Glass as a wearable smartphone.
Right?
Yeah, you can put it on if you like.
But lighter and quicker to access.
Oh, wow.
Right now, Glass is a work in progress.
I can just flick my eyes into this corner, and I see a very crisp screen.
The little square you see glowing here is actually a tiny computer screen. Google hopes that in the not-too-distant future, it will bring us our email, show us our text messages, and provide access to the internet. And the tiny camera here will be a new way to share your experiences with friends.
So this is wild. So I'm seeing a beautiful path through a woods. As I turn my head, I'm actually looking around the scene. Oh, and I can even look down and up. Wow, those are beautiful.
But Google Glass is just the tip of the iceberg. Researchers like Henry Fuchs at the University of North Carolina are developing technologies that blend the virtual and physical worlds